All right, folks. Carlos Rodon. Wow. You know, the last episode we just did, because we're believers in self-scouting and we'll always admit when we get something wrong. And we were concerned, I think, to the point where we didn't even want Carlos Rodon starting a game in this series if he didn't have to. Carlos Rodon just set the Yankees up for a potential dominating series. So we're going to get into it. Before we do, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Be sure to follow us on social media. Be sure to check us out. You can look in the description. You're going to find all sorts of links. If you want to become a member, then you can do that. The join button is below. The member link is below. There's also a Discord server. All that is, if you've never heard of Discord, it's just look as our Discord server anyway, is a 24/7 Yankees chat. And it is lively, Gary, during the Yankee games, which is really cool to see. A lot of, community members getting involved there. So really cool stuff. And you can also check us out on all podcast platforms. The Yankees won 5-2 today. They win game 1 of the ALCS, and they win the first game against the Guardians in a playoff series. That sounds like 2022. Hopefully they don't have the same fate as 2022. So we're going to dive into it. A lot of great things to talk about. You got Carlos Rodon. We're going to be talking about Luke Weaver. We're going to be talking about Clay Holmes, the bullpen. We're going to be talking about Rizzo, John Birdie, Oswaldo Cabrera, that whole deal at first base, the roster. And we'll definitely be talking about Big G and Juan Soto. But Gary, I'm glad anyway. It is fun to be back here talking about Yankees baseball. That was a fun game. I understand maybe it wasn't the perfect game. They went 0-for-7 with runners in scoring position. But at the end of the day, this is what the Yankees need to do. It's very simple. I got some criticism in the comment section. I did see early on when I said, I don't care how they win, just win. People said, well, that's going to bleed into the next series. I mean, it might, but my point is it doesn't matter how it happens as long as it happens. But I don't mind watching 2 home runs go over Yankee Stadium walls for the Yankees at that. So, Gary, let's talk about Carlos Rodon. I just thought the 9 strikeout performance, I know he gave up the home run, but he said before the game, even keel. I saw Garrett Cole, I'm paraphrasing, not directly quoting, but I saw Garrett Cole, poker face he mentioned, really just not showing his emotion. I want to do that. Well, on this show, it's all about show me, don't tell me, right? We don't care what you say, just show it. Rodon showed it, and he has a lot to feel really good about. So this was a defining moment in Rodon's Yankee tenure. This was kind of, I understand it's the ALCS, not the World Series, but this kind of reminded me of AJ Burnett in the World Series a little bit. This is a huge way to start off the series because while we were against this, and I wanted Heel, and I think you wanted Heel to start game 1, this now sets you up where you could have your ace pitch game 2, and you could go up 2-0, and then keep in mind you have to go to Cleveland now. So Cleveland has no scenario as long as Cole does his thing, and the Yankees take care of business in game 2 tomorrow. Cleveland can't win out and be celebrating if worse comes to worse in Cleveland. So I think it's very important to get these 2 wins and to have Cole, to have Rodon set the table for Cole. That was huge.
Yeah. Okay. So it's good to be wrong about Carlos Rodon. I'm not going to sugarcoat what this was. I was wrong, right? My opinion on it was, and nothing's a sure thing. We make predictions of what we think's going to happen, and those things may or may not happen, right? A lot of us thought Giancarlo Stanton should be off this team, and now he's a key contributor in October, right? Where he's going to be a huge reason why, if we go to the World Series, that we're there in the first place. But I digress. Carlos Rodon was spectacular in this game, and most importantly, Jake, he wasn't overly emotional. This is the key to how he's pitching. Are you going to act like it's the end of the world, the sky is falling when you give up a run? Because at some point or another in a postseason game, something's going to go awry. Something is going to happen where you need to rebound. And when he gave up that home run, a lot of us held our breath for a second. And some of us are saying, well, all of us are rooting for this guy. But you don't know who he's going to be after he gets hit in the jaw. And all of a sudden, you saw a different Carlos Rodon. And what made us feel like that may happen was early in the game. Everyone was looking at the radar gun. How juiced up is Carlos Rodon? The reason that matters, are you seeing 98 to 100? Or are you seeing controlled violence? Are you seeing 93 to 97? Because obviously he's got electric stuff. But if he's overhyped, the fall off is steeper, much steeper. And Carlos Rodon, it seemed today, was much more even keeled. He was much more reasonable with his expectations of what people were wanting from him today. He needed to be accurate. He needed to actually throw that slider, not aiming that pitch. You need to be accurate with your fastball, hit location, inside, outside. We obviously know what he does working up in the zone, but his game plan was very simple. Throw strikes in good spots in the strike zone and bury the slider. He did that all day. It was dominant. There's nothing anybody can do in baseball, not even the greatest hitters in this sport, when you're executing that game plan. Very simple. So Carlos Rodon, as far as I'm concerned, this was an unexpected, dominant performance against Cleveland. Cleveland has to be looking at game 2 now as a must win. You cannot allow the Yankees to essentially go down or essentially win at Yankee Stadium. And tomorrow's game assures us that we'll have that if we win. So the way I'm feeling, if I'm the Yankees, Garrett Cole is paid to take this home now. He is paid to go put this away in game 2. But the most important thing, I actually mentioned it before this game started, this offense. Today, it really felt like our offense struggled despite the fact that we ended up scoring, I believe it was 5 runs. So that's our magic number. We always say if we score 5, we should win that game. But Jake, we didn't hit, right? We were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. It was a walk fest. But you have to give Yankees hitters credit. You still have to watch pitches to walk. There's a reason not everybody walks, right? So you still, at some point or another, you are earning your way to first base by walking. And I want to make sure Yankees hitters get the necessary credit when it's due. But going into game 2, don't have the expectations that Bibby is going to be walking 7 or 8 guys. That's more than likely not happening. So we're going to have to slug at some point. I'm just glad it wasn't today.
No, I think that's well said. I think sticking with Rodon here, then we'll move on to the bullpen, because a lot of good things to talk about the bullpen, but wanted to bring up Dan Plesac. Okay.
Yeah. Because
we have something to talk about with the bullpen part of our show that he said. Very interesting comments. We'll get to it. But the thing that I sent you earlier today, that MLB Network tweeted out, thought it was a really good breakdown. He was breaking down Carlos Rodon. When he's good, his head is online and on target. Okay. What he means by that? Well, he went back, Carlos Rodon's dominant start against the A's, and he went back and he circled where his head placement was after every follow through on his pitch. And it was always dead center, staring at the catcher. And when he struggled that last start against the Royals at the stadium in the postseason, his head is pointed down or all the way to the third base side. And it was obvious. Those type of starts, when he's doing that and he's wild, it shows up with his pitches. His pitches are wild. He's missing wild. What we saw today, Rodon's hitting corners. He's throwing gas. He's mixing up his pitches. He was really hard to hit. And he went up against some guys in that lineup that can do damage. And no, don't worry, Aaron Boone, because we know you watch this. We're not going to say that Jose Ramirez is underrated, because we don't want you ripping off your arms. That's
everyone's go-to. He's not underrated. He's just playing in Cleveland, and it's a smaller market. That's all it is. Jose Ramirez is not underrated by anybody. We all know he's a superstar. If he was a Yankee, he'd be hitting 3rd, 4th, right? He's a great player. And
I love that Boone said that.
I love it. Doesn't it make a lot of sense, though, about the mechanics of Carlos Rodon? If you were going into the front yard to play catch with your dad, do you think you'd have a better opportunity to hit him in the chest if you're looking this way? Sorry for those of you who listen to a podcast. If your head is 90 degrees left, or do you think you want to be looking at your dad as you're throwing him the ball? Pretty simple. And I actually like to go back to what Garrett Cole said when he first signed with the Yankees. He mentioned his favorite player to watch, and this shocked me, was actually Masahiro Tanaka. And I said, geez, I wonder why. He's more of a craft guy, not a power pitcher. We loved watching Masahiro Tanaka, but you don't think of Garrett Cole and the 100 miles an hour and power slider, power knuckle curve. You don't think of Masahiro Tanaka. So what was it? And Garrett Cole said, the reason I love watching Tanaka pitch was that he had repeatable mechanics. That's my goal. The more often I repeat my mechanics, the better chance I have to hit location. That's something that Carlos Rodon did a much better job of executing today. It's something that was mentioned on the broadcast. At some point or another, if you're looking the other direction as you're pitching, you're probably on some pitches looking at the glove, and then on other pitches, you're looking away. And you're half the feeling like, okay, my mechanics, they feel off. I just don't know why. And it's good sometimes to use footage and say, what is different about quality pitches versus not? What's different about the pitch that I bounce when I'm trying to bounce it versus the pitch I hang when I was trying to bounce it? What were the differences? Is it just release point, or is my head looking the opposite direction? And that footage said, you need to be looking at the glove. Simplify your mechanics. Don't overthrow and try to throw 100 miles an hour. You need to be locating your fastball. And Carlos Rodon thankfully did that today. I thought he really laid off the gas pedal, and it allowed him to pace his way through this start. I know I was live tweeting this game and was talking about how the 5th inning was materializing, how the 7th or the 6th inning was actually going to come up with the top of the order. He ended up facing Jose Ramirez, and he did a brilliant job. He did an excellent job with those at-bats. I thought he did everything he was supposed to do. And the most important part, when your back's up against the wall and everyone has expectations, some people think they're at the roof, you need to be excellent, and other people think very low of you. They don't even think you should be starting the game. It is very easy to want to do more, to prove everyone wrong. But sometimes in those moments where some people are doubting you, you need to rely on mechanics, right? And that's very difficult to do. I give Aaron Boone a ton of credit, right, for rolling with this, because we have to remember, he could have very easily bailed on this. Rodon was not very good in his last start. You easily could have not given him the opportunity to do this, and it changes the complexion of the series. So bravo to Boone. More importantly to Rodon, who obviously went out there and got that start, and Ashley Rodon, who will be able to get on Twitter and not have to be under fire, because I know she defends her husband, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I feel bad for her. She gets absolutely berated, and it's like, she's not on the mound. And what do you
I don't know
want?
why she even goes on there, to be honest with you.
I know. What are you really missing if you're not on Twitter? I mean, I don't know. Well, we wouldn't have met, so I can't say that. But
this is true.
When it comes to Ashley Rodon, like, it cracks me up, because it's like, how dare a wife defend her husband? Like, are you kidding me?
I've been crapped on once or twice on Twitter before, and my wife gets on there every time. Is like, these people are idiots, and I'm like, yeah, I know. You just you got to let them be idiots. It is what it is. This is why we started a Discord. Is you don't have to go on and hear what a bunch of college students have to say about analytics every day. You know, like it doesn't have to be that type of conversation every single day when it comes to baseball, particularly the Yankees. And that's actually why we started this Yankee show, is so that we can talk nuance. And that's something I think that Ashley Rodon deserves, is a little bit of nuance. Is that just because, and this needs to be said, on our podcast, we mentioned, hey, Rodon maybe shouldn't start any games in this series. And that was our prediction of what should happen, right? Not that would, but if we're saying that, that doesn't mean we think that Carlos Rodon sucks. I know that people project that onto everybody that has a unique idea of how to go about winning these games. But the reality is that all of these guys are good pitchers. And Rodon, while not starting those games, my expectation was for him to be used the same way that, was it Patrick Corbin in the 2019 World Series? He had a huge role in that World Series. Gigantic. He was pitching against essentially the heart of the order, giving multiple innings in multiple games in a World Series. I would say that's pretty important. So people think that that means I hate Carlos Rodon because I would have rather Luis Gil have started this game. But guess what? That prediction was wrong. The chances of Luis Gil giving this performance we saw today, they're not high. As good as Luis Gil is, very difficult to give 6 full innings of 3-hit ball, 9 Ks, not walking anybody. That was an excellent start, and you have to tip your cap. It's all you can do. And we're very happy, by the way, to have seen it, because I would have rather, imagine if I ended up being right. We're a Yankees podcast, Jake. that's covering being down 0-1, and we're 3 losses away from being done as a show until winter meetings, essentially. That's not in the cards. It's not something we want to see. And we'd be lying to you guys to tell you, oh yeah, for the sake of being right, we would like to lose so that our show ends early. It's not the way this goes.
No, it's a silly concept, but you know how social media is nowadays. If you say one thing, you know, oh, well, that means you hate him. Like,
it's personal.
If Ashley watches our show, I'm sure she probably wasn't fond of the way we said that, but any sort of criticism or negativity isn't going to be viewed in a great light anyway. But what I think is important that we get this across is the same thing with Boone. I think once again, I thought Boone managed a great game. This has now been how many games in a row? I think he's been really, really, really good. And I like that he got a little nervous when Rodon gave up the home run.
Sure.
He put a guy in the bullpen. That's exactly what I would have done. But he didn't just immediately yank him out of the game. He trusted his pitcher. And furthermore, he trusted Rodon, a guy that he went to war with all year long, a guy who led the team in wins this year. He trusted him to start this game when no one else believed in that. So I think he deserves a ton of credit. I think we can wrap up that part of, the show with Rodon, because I think we've given him a lot of praise. And that was, we had talked about a lot. We did a lot of, pre-postseason stuff in August and September. And the thing I kept arriving to, and I think at one point you talked about as well, Rodon can be like AJ Burnett. He absolutely can. He can have a couple of those huge starts and no one is going to care. Now, also, Rodon had a fantastic season compared to what he had the previous year. So you've seen some, adaptability to the environment, pitching in New York, which he didn't want to do initially. That was the whole, report and everything. So I'm impressed. This was a gutsy performance and they had to have it. I don't care what anyone says. The way the playoffs are designed, I get 2 at home, you get 3 on the road. Essentially, they're saying the Yankees are supposed to win these 2 games. That's always how I looked at it. They're supposed to be up 2-0. Now the test is, can you win any of those games in Cleveland? If you can, well, now, say you lose 2 of them, well, you're up 3-2 going back to New York.
If you lose back-to-back games in that situation, you do not deserve to go to the World Series. And I don't even think we would be upset, but we also would be only blaming ourselves. You cannot possibly think, if you win game 1 and 2, right? You go back to Cleveland. You win 1 of those 3 games, which are 3 games in succession on the road. You win 1 game. You show back up to Yankee Stadium and you don't win 1 of game 6 or game 7, likely Garrett Cole would be pitching 1 of those 2 games, likely game 6. So you mean to tell me you had all hands on deck in a game 7 and in a game 6, and you couldn't close out a game? You can't possibly blame anyone other than yourselves. You should have been in the World Series given that situation, but obviously we have to earn that first by winning game 2. That's the key to all of this. And it bodes well for us. We've got Garrett Cole, who we pay a lot of money to be big time. He was big time in his last start. Our expectations are he delivers in game 2. Those are our expectations. And sometimes people are underwhelming based on your expectations, but you got to take your chances with your best guy. He is our best guy. I know that some people say, well, he came up small in the Boston series. He came up small in this other series. Go watch the other aces, right? Go watch. Jack Flaherty was huge for the Dodgers, right?
Yeah, but he also got shelled, in the first round.
Absolutely tomahawked, right?
Yeah.
And some people would look at that and they say, man, that's room for concern, right? You have cause for concern in that situation. Do you really think the Dodgers contemplated, hey, maybe we should be worried about the start? No, you just have to assume people come back to the means. Where is their middle ground? Where is their baseline? Garrett Cole's baseline is excellent. So we're essentially hoping for Garrett Cole's typical postseason baseline, which is excellent in game 2. Then you have to expect the Yankees offense to improve. It has to get better. I look at today as a step in the right direction. Some of the bigger bats left the yard. That is a good thing. They obviously created a ton of traffic. They took pitches when they needed to. They took first base. I actually thought one of the biggest at bats today was Anthony Volpe. Despite him obviously not spraying the ball all over the yard, he did get Cobb out of the game with a big walk. They went into their bullpen right away. And it was a clear decision from Cleveland. What do we do in this situation? We're obviously losing already in this game. Do we go with our big guns and keep the game where it's at? Or do we go with somebody who can maybe hold us over? And obviously Avila was huge for them. Gave him 2 2/3 innings of shutout ball. We didn't get a hit, right? So he was big time for them to get them through this game, keep it close enough where they had a shot, and they did, right? So we put a ton of pressure on them by forcing them to throw their best arms. They didn't, kept it close enough, and now Cleveland has to fully believe that they're going into game 2 where we are going to go all hands on deck to steal this game. It's a huge game for both sides. If we lose game 2, Cleveland's thinking, okay, we got them right where we want them. They're going to be in a tight series regardless, where they're going to end up having to score against Class A late in the game if they want to go to the championship. That's the way this is going to go. Or we can win game 2, and now suddenly you're looking at Cleveland's starting pitching and saying, how are you going to survive games 3 through 5? That's all.
No, absolutely. And when you look at today, and we talk about all the time, getting into that bullpen, well, now that bleeds into tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And then you have the off day at Wednesday. So, but then you have 3 straight. So if the Yankees get into the bullpen again, and for whatever reason, Cleveland's pitchers their hands are shaking and they can't throw strikes and they're walking guys like today, well, now back to back to back, the Yankees are going to be in a very good spot to win in Cleveland if they take care of business game 2. So they could very well be celebrating in Cleveland if things go accordingly. And I just have to say, right now, the Yankees have Rodon, who just went game 1. Game 2 is Cole. Game 3 is Clark Schmidt, who I said is the most consistent guy.
Yes.
Game 4 is Luis Heel. So you could go back to Rodon for game 5. You could go with Cole for game 5. I think I would go with Rodon the way he pitched today. Cole game 6, or you could skip him and move him to game 7 if it gets to that, right? But the reality is you have things that you can play with. You have 4 starters. Cleveland doesn't have that. They might not even have 3 starters. They've been using a 3-starter rotation. Right. Alex Cobb was hurt today. Okay. Let's give him all the credit in the world for gutting that out because he was injured. He was. They came out and he did not want to leave. And I get it. He's a competitor. You could tell he was visibly in pain. And that is going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem for Cleveland. If he's not ready to go, now you're down to a 2-man rotation and a bullpen game like the Dodgers had to do today.
Health is becoming a huge factor in the playoffs. And obviously as the Yankees, we've dealt with health being a huge concern, specifically with our offense, right? And Giancarlo Stanton and him being available over the years. But if you really think about this, look across the way. Look at the Dodgers, right? They've got Flaherty, right? They've got essentially Yamamoto, Flaherty, and Buehler. They've got 3 guys we've heard of. The other guys we really haven't. And Knack, they don't really trust. He pitched today. So they've got a 2-man rotation. Cleveland, essentially, now after Cobb is not 100% clearly, they've got a 3-man rotation.
They got 2 now.
They now have a 2-man rotation. So at this point, Cleveland is going to have to carry the series with their bullpen. The Dodgers did it last series against the Padres. It can be done. It is not impossible, right? We've seen Giants teams in the early 2010s do the exact same thing, obviously with a huge help of Bumgarner. But the point, you can lose a series to a great bullpen. It can be done with a scrappy team, but it doesn't help your chances having 2 reliable arms. The Yankees have Luis Heel, which is essentially our calling card at this point. We didn't use him in the division series. This was an arm all year long, Jake, people talked about. He's going to be overused. He's a rookie. We don't know what he's going to look like after pitching 175 innings. He's going to get hurt. Oh, look, I guarantee he's going to be out with Tommy John in 2 weeks. A lot of people were saying this type of stuff, right? We were having to defend these type of talks. But now that you put yourself in position where, remember, Poteet came back, Schmidt came back, then Heel came back, and they were all ready at the same time. Part of that benefit is that you get to this point in the season and we have enough arms to win with Luis Heel waiting in the wings. Now, all of a sudden, Luis Heel is a icing on the cake and not a necessity that we have to push out the garage. He's now this like Sunday sports car that we get to pop out. That is a huge benefit for the Yankees. And I'm here to tell everybody that doesn't make winning in October easy. But when you look around and you see a 2-man rotation here and a 2-man rotation there, these teams are very susceptible to falling apart. We have a much stronger and larger core to work with. We have you can just say we have a higher baseline of expectation to win and get to a World Series. That is a good thing. It is obviously a tip in the cap, a feather in the cap for Brian Cashman for the type of job he did. But it is interesting because this is probably the most scrutinized job. Yet when we got to the end, we had a lot more than I think we were expecting. So it is an interesting team that we're looking at. They were very patient with certain guys, and then suddenly they made their appearances. So huge game 1 win. We did what we had to do. Rodon surprised a lot of people. Some people were probably really happy that we were wrong, and I'm cool with that. I'm not upset about it at all. And now it's Garrett Cole's turn. Garrett Cole's turn to be exactly who we pay him to be, to fulfill those shoes and expectations of great pitchers. CC Sabathia, a lot of great arms in Yankees history. These are the moments that you need to deliver and put a stamp on the championship series and send us to the World Series.
No, that's absolutely correct. And yeah, I just think, when it comes to Rodon, he was in a very similar situation, albeit more pressure, but very similar situation to the game we were at, where Marcus Stroman gets the opportunity here to shut everyone up. Going up against Baltimore, he can put the Yankees in position to win the ALCS. They clinch with a win. We thought we were going to see it. He gave up 13 hits. And look, I'm not trying to dog, Stroman. He made the roster. Congratulations to him. Hopefully he works out. But Rodon did what Stroman couldn't do. And that's the thing, is that Yankees fans don't. I know there's this common thing where, Yankees fans don't like this player. There's no such thing. If Carlos Rodon comes out and he throws a no-hitter in the playoffs, I don't care. His worst enemy, who's a Yankee fan, is going to like Carlos Rodon. The Yankees fans and any fan should care about results. So it's never personal, but we're here and now. What have you done for me lately? It doesn't matter what you did during the season. This is now. We've flipped the script. We have moved the pages. It's why Aaron Judge is always under scrutiny during the postseason, because people are tired of it. They want to see these guys succeed. Rodon succeeded today. It was a big deal. Now the Yankees are in position. They got Garrett Cole taking on Tanner Bibby. And then after that, you're going to see Boyd, who they don't really have him go very, very long in those games. They kind of turn those games into a bullpen game. If you look at what he did against Detroit, and Cobb's status is unknown. So the Yankees are in the driver's seat if they can win tomorrow night at the stadium. But let's pivot over to the bullpen now, because I thought, we talked a pretty decent length with the starters. Now the bullpen, I have to say, I know the streak is over. Maybe that's best, because that's a lot of pressure to carry a scoreless streak for the bullpen.
Dodgers had this exact same streak.
But, Tim Hill, I'm sure he wants that back. It didn't kill them. They won. Let's move on. Let's not dog Tim Hill. It was a bad performance for him. He hasn't looked awful. Clay Holmes deserves a lot of credit. I thought they brought in Clay Holmes a little too early. I thought Clay Holmes should have been in the Tim Hill role. He wasn't, but Holmes has just been incredible. That's 14 straight innings, no runs allowed. It is a Yankee record in the postseason. And Luke Weaver, I'm going to say this right now. and we'll get to Dan Plesac's comments. But Luke Weaver could be the reason the Yankees win the World Series. And Boone deserves all the credit in the world because that was not, I don't care what, we talked about it, right? Clay Holmes, you have to move on from him. Yes, but the way Aaron Boone is as a manager, considered a player's first manager, he is. That was not an easy decision to make. I don't want to minimize how tough of a decision that was because I know he believes in Clay Holmes. That's why he continues to pitch, and he's doing very well. Problem is Clay Holmes was never in the proper role, and they're realizing that. And here's the thing, Gary, we don't talk about this, but he had all these guys. Remember I made that list? Oh, Lou Trevino, he's pitched well in the ninth inning before, and this guy's pitched well in the ninth inning, and Canely. There are different guys that you could go with. He went with Luke Weaver, and I had Luke Weaver as one of the top guys to select, but there were a lot of guys. Meza had some interesting numbers there. He goes with Luke Weaver, and this could be the deciding factor of their season. What do I always say? You are as good as your closer.
Yeah.
He is the best closer right now in the game per Dan Plesac, but I agree to an extent. He's the hottest closer in baseball. Right now, he's pitching better than any reliever in the league. He's not better than Clase. We'll get to that. He's not better than Mason Miller. But right now, we've now seen the transition, Gary. This was going to be tough. I didn't necessarily think Luke Weaver was going to be this dominant when the lights shine the brightest. I thought this was really impressive. I'm excited. He's really taken over this closer role. But going in October, you never know. That's when their true colors shine. And I'll tell you right now, Luke Weaver has been sensational. And this is postseason baseball. You talked about ALDS. It's 5 games. It doesn't really feel. This is the postseason.
Yep.
You are in the Final Four. So you need to pitch your best. And I just can't stress it enough. The fact that, and I like the fact Boone does it. You can go to you can go to Clay Holmes for 2 innings or 1 inning, and he's shown that he can do it in this postseason. And you can go to your closer and Luke Weaver. You could go 1 1/3, 1 2/3, 2 inning save. It's just been really impressive. And I don't care about the walk. And I thought he just had some really ballsy pitch selection, but the execution was on point. 4 strikeouts, 5 batters faced. I'm just really impressed. And like I said, you're only as good as your closer. The Yankees are the best team in baseball right now. They were probably the best team in baseball for most of the year. And nothing's changed. The Yankees will win the World Series as long as they don't beat themselves. They have way more health than anybody else. Part of the reason why you don't want to play in the wild card, it's more strain. This is a team that played 162 games just like everybody else. But now you're looking at this, okay, in the 5-game series, they played 4 games. They won 3 games to 1, right? So now you factor in this game. So they played 5 games. So they played 167 games this year, okay? That's the thing. Guardians, same thing. They didn't really play. They played an extra game because of the, game 5. But they also got the bye, like the Yankees. This is a team, though, has had injury struggles in the past. But all of a sudden, best rotation by far, maybe best bullpen right now, at least the hottest. And the bats aren't even really going off right now the way the Mets are, the Dodgers. So you mentioned it at some point or another, things are going to click, we think. But sticking with the bullpen right now, Gary, I'm just so impressed. This was the biggest question mark for a lot of people. And I think they're answering the bell right now, and they got to continue to do it. But right now, you have a lot of reasons to feel good about this team. Luke Weaver is certainly one of those big ones.
So the way I look at Luke Weaver, I try to look at comparisons, some players that I can remember from recent history and that pop into my mind. And it's okay to not be the best arm in baseball as long as you're one of the hottest. And I think there's no question about it. Luke Weaver is probably the hottest arm right now that's currently in the postseason. And that matters. It reminds me a lot of Andrew Miller in 2016. And that was an arm that Cleveland milked the whole postseason. Matter of fact, I was actually at those games in Cleveland. And those games, like the way you have to look at that is that you wouldn't look at him and say, okay, this is just the best arm or the best closer. No, Cleveland was actually bringing him out in the 6th and 7th inning. They were waiting to deploy him in the middle of games saying, oh, the top of your order's coming up. You've got some momentum. We're going to bring in Miller. Hottest arm. That's what the Yankees are doing by saying, hey, Weaver, come out and get us 5 outs, right? It's exactly what you saw out of Cleveland in their last series, in the division series, where they brought out Clase. He ended up giving up, I believe, a grand slam or 3-run homer. It was a 3-run homer. Clase hasn't given up a 3-run homer in his entire career. Okay, that's how good he is. Okay, he is the best pitcher that is currently in the postseason. He's unbelievable. But the point here, Luke Weaver's role, we can't forget where he started this season. The opening series, we're talking, do you remember that Diamondback series? We've actually talked about it quite a bit on this show. He pitched the 5th inning. He was pitching the 5th inning of those baseball games. He was nowhere near any high leverage situations, not even close. Okay. And matter of fact, after watching that series, a lot of people were saying, geez, 94, 95, this kid stinks. It's not very good. He's getting hit hard, a lot of hard contact, didn't turn into runs. We ended up winning those games, but he wasn't missing bats. He didn't have the type of confidence that he currently has with that changeup. Plesac was actually talking about, gee, that's pretty ballsy to be using that pitch in those counts. But here's the interesting part. If he had watched the Yankees the same way our audience watches the Yankees, or the same way that we who prepare for this show, the way that we watch Luke Weaver has been doing this. He's been throwing 3-2 changeups. He's been going 3-1 changeup to get to 3-2 and then elevating a fastball. He has the nerve. And I'm here to tell you right now, Jake, when you want to talk about who you want in the closer's role, it's not for everybody. It's not for every personality. You've got to have some nerve, because you have to remember, one bad pitch, people are going to remember your name and stand in front of your locker as to the reason your team lost today. A ridiculous concept, I know. But Luke Weaver seems like he embodies that risk. He's a risk taker, and he executes his pitches. Most important thing, do you execute location, and do you get off your mark in times of turmoil, in times of pressure? He does not. Luke Weaver gets better. Matter of fact, if there's 2 guys on base and it's a 3-ball count, 3-1, my expectation is that Weaver's focus is going to go to the next level. He's going to improve as a player, whereas there are a lot of other players, not just on our roster, but on plenty of other rosters where you say, yeah, I can see him just shaking and falling off the mound. Very similar to what you saw from Cantillo. Could you imagine if Cantillo had to come out and close a game today? It's not. He was terrified. It
looked like he just played Silent Hill 2 in VR.
It is human, but the good news is about what the Yankees did this year, and the good news is about Weaver and what happened with Holmes and the timing that it happened. We had just enough time to figure out what type of heart Weaver had in that chest, and we found it out just in time. Soon as we found it out, we said, we got it. We didn't show up to the postseason and said, who's closing games for this team? We knew it was Weaver, right? But imagine if the postseason had started 2 months ago. Do you guys realize that Clay Holmes would still be blowing saves for this baseball team? Do you realize that Weaver would be coming out in the 6th and 7th inning in low leverage situations, being good, but not great? That's what we'd be watching. We'd be watching Conley. Canley would probably be pitching like 8th and 9th inning appearances every once in a while this postseason. He's not going to be now, right? That's how much things change. So the Yankees right now seem to be slotting in with really key spots in their rotation and in their bullpen. It's making sense now. And you finally don't have to get to the 9th inning and say, wow, our worst pitcher's pitching. No, Clay Holmes seems to be doing just fine in a reduced role. Sometimes guys are really good secondary cast members, like really good supporting characters. I've watched a lot of good movies. Matter of fact, Jake, on this show, we do a movie at the end of every episode. For a lot of people who watch this podcast, you already knew this. But there are some people out there, some actors out there, where you say, man, Robert Downey Jr., he won Best Supporting Character in Oppenheimer. He was spectacular. But no one asked the question of, Why didn't he just go into Killian Murphy's? Like, why didn't he just take that role? Well, because sometimes you need to star in your role. Clay Holmes at this point is starring in the 7th to 8th inning role. He's been great. He comes out there. He can give you multiple innings. If you don't need it, he can come off the mound. He seems happy with it. Not a problem. So right now for the Yankees and their bullpen, the only concern I had today, I know you mentioned that Hill has been pretty decent, in the recent past and all that. I thought Conley's probably should have pitched in that moment. Just my opinion. I would have went with somebody who has the pedigree in those moments. But I will say the fact that he didn't pitch, he will be fresh tomorrow. That is a good thing. I expect to see Weaver again. Who knows? Maybe Canley actually closes tomorrow. So we've got some options here. And at the very least, you know how I like options.
I love options too, right? I mean, right now, I'm going to tell you something. First off, Rodon had 25 whiffs today.
Is that good?
We didn't. So Savant, baseball Savant, 25 whiffs. And Luke Weaver had 7. Those were the leaders of the day. That's insane. There was another starter on the other team. And Luke Weaver had 7. And you look over at what does that mean compared to the Mets and Dodgers? I'll tell you. Manaea had 11. Brent Honeywell had 8. Those were the highest. So, Rodon and Weaver were spectacular. And Luke Weaver, I love that you brought up Arizona. I remember the Arizona series. He pitched 2 1/3. He gave up a run. Then the Toronto series, he gave up 3 runs. And you were like, wow, this guy stinks. What?
Yeah, he didn't.
I remember you I don't trust him. I don't know where he came from. I don't want him pitching. And that first month was his worst month. And guess what? He went from not even having a strikeout an inning to now get this, Gary, since he's been the closer. This is insane.
Yep.
He has this. This is absolutely ludicrous. He has 34 strikeouts, and I'm going to do the math here. In 5, okay, so 17 and 2/3 innings.
So essentially 2 an inning. Close.
That's insane. To average that is insane. He's been unconscious. And I was looking through his log, and he gets a lot of strikeouts. And, he had back in May, he had a 22 strikeout in 16 innings, May. But what I saw he has a strikeout in every game in September. He had almost at least 2 a game. Listen to these numbers. 1 on September 2nd, right? 2, 2, 3, 5, 4, 3, 3, 2. Going into the postseason, that's pretty good. He was ready to go.
He also goes multiple innings, by the way. When you were saying 4, 5, 4,
yeah,
when you're saying those numbers, that literally means he's striking out 2 or 3 guys in an inning and then coming back out, and he's still sharp. So part of the reason why his strikeout numbers are as good as they are, by the way, is that he doesn't really give an inch, right? There are certain players. Let's just use players on our roster. Garrett Cole. If Garrett Cole's not sharp, right, and we've seen that before, and he's behind 2-1, right, 1-0, 3-1 in a count, he kind of gives up on it. And we know he's not trying to give up contact. He wasn't trying to be in that situation in the first place. But Garrett Cole is kind of out of tricks. Once he's way behind in the count, there's really nothing for him. Weaver is not built that way. Cole might groove a fastball and say, well, I kind of put myself in this position and now I've got to challenge a hitter. Weaver doesn't really do that. Weaver's the type of guy, it could be 2-1. He might flip you a changeup, go slider, and then go another changeup. He's not the type of guy that's just going to, what they call it? The kids call it power put, ego push. That's what the kids call it in Call of Duty. Yeah, he's not going to do that. He's going to play his game. He's going to essentially say, I'm trying to get to this changeup. You can't hit it. And I know you're probably thinking, hey, it's 3-1, it's 3-2. He really doesn't want to walk me. Hey, maybe Jose Ramirez is on deck. He doesn't give a rip. Here's a changeup anyway. That's how good he is. And it's good because it goes to show you the level of confidence he has in himself. Nobody can help you. Once we've put the ball in your glove and said, hey, go close this game. And not only that, you're coming out in the 8th inning and you're going to see Fry, Ramirez, and Lane Thomas, who obviously turned a game on his head in the last series he played.
Yeah.
We need you to get these guys out. You're not facing 6, 7, 8 in the 9th and it's cookie cutter. You're up 2, go close the game. No, we're putting him in tight positions and he delivers more times than not, right? That's his job. And if you get really good at it, we start calling you Mariano Rivera and the best pitcher of all time, but he's obviously not there now. He doesn't have the pedigree for it. And to Plesac, to answer his question, no, he is not the best pitcher because obviously Clase is that. But as far as I'm concerned, I want the hottest pitcher that baseball has to offer right now, the most confident pitcher baseball has to offer. I believe, and I could be wrong, as of now, it is Luke Weaver.
I agree. He's been sensational. And yeah, it's just, he's a weapon. You know, he's psycho, man. You could bring him in for 2 innings and he's not going to, you know, like you said, he's not even going to give an inch. And what I mean by psycho is on a 3-1 count. Yeah, he's going to hit you with that changeup. He knows he has to hit it. He has to get the strike and he's going to get it. And he's going to miss bats. He missed 7 today. So yeah, that's Luke Weaver. Moving on to the lineup, Juan Soto. Aren't you glad Juan Soto is a New York Yankee? Good Lord. It's just every at bat is like a movie with him. Like I feel like the earth stands still. Like I love Judge. Absolutely love Judge. But Judge, there's not is like the showmanship that Soto has. It's just a different type of player.
No, nobody has that. Nobody.
Juan Soto makes every at bat a movie. That's what I've realized. It like every at bat feels like the postseason. It felt like the postseason against the Astros when he had that Oppo home run that you're like, how the hell did he hit that out?
Hold on a second, Jake. Did you ever play wiffle ball in the yard as a kid? And you say, well, or even playing basketball, where you're like, game 7, 1, 5, 4, 3, and then you just shoot the ball, or you say,
are you saying Soto
7.
does that? He goes up there and he's like, this is game 7, the World Series.
They pitched to you and you whiff, and then you throw it back to your friend. You're like, no, one more. It looks like Juan Soto is pretending every single pitch. And I know I cannot possibly be the only person who feels this way. He seems like he's taking that bases loaded 3-2 count to win the World Series at bat. And it seems that way now, so that it's good practice. This is part of the reason why, guys, when he was taking those at bats at 20 years old against Justin Verlander in a World Series, you're like, he's probably going to be overwhelmed in this situation. And yet a lot of us were like, probably not, because he's practicing these high stakes, high stress at bats, high stress appearances in the middle of the regular season. You can watch game 52, go on a Tuesday with your dad to a game and say, man, Juan Soto's taking this at bat serious every time. He's like staring down the pitcher. He's flipping his bat, and he's not doing it. Maybe he is in a cocky way, but he really takes the game that serious. And I believe it's good practice. Same way Pete Rose would dive into third base like his life depended on it. And in the middle of a regular season game, that way in a postseason game, you had no doubt what he was going to do. He's going to do the same thing he did for all 162 of the regular season. Juan Soto delivers energy. And obviously the talent speaks for itself. When you don't shortcut the process, all you can expect is when the stakes are highest, I'm going to deliver. I've been doing this all year. So Juan Soto is the one player probably on this roster. Never in a million years would I stress about who he'll be. He's going to be the same player. And it's the reason that you've mentioned a lot. He is very important to this roster. I mean, I don't even know another way to describe that. He's the baseline. Like his baseline is just already in the stratosphere in itself. And it allows us to buy time for Aaron Judge to look like Aaron Judge. I know he had a lot of hard contact today. Very good news for the Yankees. But in the meantime, until we get those real Aaron Judge results where we're all tweeting, all rise, Juan Soto will be just fine in the meantime.
Exactly. And, you know, I don't want to say if the Yankees didn't have Juan Soto, they would have lost the last series, but they might have. I don't want to know what that alternate universe looks like. Juan Soto is okay taking over as the guy for this team in the postseason. He'll tell you straight up when Aaron Judge hits a home run after not really getting much going throughout the postseason. As soon as Aaron Judge has that night, because it'll come, Gary, might be tomorrow, might be Thursday, Friday, whatever. Aaron Judge will hit a home run. And Juan Soto, and this is the type of guy you want in your clubhouse, is going to say, yeah, he's the best. I mean, how many teammates have you seen? Like, this is a competitive sport. Juan Soto could easily believe he's the greatest player ever. He could. But he always just, reverts it back to Judge. That is Juan Soto. In a way, he's kind of the captain. Like, he's actually kind of the captain. If you really think about it, the approach that we were talking about at the beginning of the season, yeah, that's back. Look at these walks. You could say what you will. Oh, they were way off the plate. I don't care. I've seen postseasons where they're swinging at all of this. They'd be out by now. 2022, they were swinging at everything that we saw today that they were taking. Everything. So I think Juan Soto's presence is huge. I'm going to say this. Gary, Juan Soto is a method actor. He's always in character. It's hilarious that he goes up there, like you said, and he is like the same way an actress or an actor is trying to get themselves to cry on command or start breathing heavy and get you have a scene where you have to be anxious, like over anxious.
I could play that role.
Well, we're not talking about back issues, Gary. But yeah, this role requires somebody with back issues and can't get out of bed. Oh, that's me.
Yeah. We need you to be very anxious in this role. I was like, I think I could do that role for you, actually, to perfection.
What about general fatigue? All right, I'm sorry, I had to go there. But no, the thing about Juan Soto is that, to your point, he keeps himself ready at all costs. Okay. And he's going to go through slumps because every single player is going to go through slumps. But Juan Soto, I do not anticipate him hitting less than 300. I don't think his batting average is going to go down. He's hitting 353. That's pretty much what he was doing when he was 19. He's the same player. He's just obviously he's learned a lot. He's gotten better. But you see that approach and that rubs off. And I'm not just saying this. Oswaldo Cabrera said, we can go to Juan and he's going to help us out. And this is not a dig at Judge. I love Judge. Judge, when he is on, he is the best. But right now he's not. Yeah. And the reality is it's unfair to expect more of Juan Soto when Aaron Judge is the one making the most money and he's the captain. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's fair. If you don't perform when your other guys aren't performing, you're gone. You all lose. So Juan Soto's stepping up to the plate. Again, I know the batting average is going to look bad for a lot of these guys. Still love Gleyber Torres' approach as well. I thought that hit early on really set the tone.
Even his outs were great. I mean, that he's hitting the ball hard the other way. You have to, at some point or another, we can't just stare at the box score. I know box scores do matter. It tells somewhat of a story. If you go 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position, yes, it tells a huge story of what happened offensively. But at the same time, if you watch the game and you say, oh yeah, the game I watched, I saw a player come up and tag 3 balls in a row the other way, and that's their game, then you probably shouldn't show up on a podcast or even on Twitter and be like, hey, that guy sucked today. No, watch the game and tell me what you saw. Did you see Gleyber Torres hitting weak ground balls to the left side, or did you see super hard contact the other way, a couple nice walks? Yeah, that's what we saw, right? And we have to tell that story because otherwise, I mean, I don't really know what we're doing here. But again, like we said before, until further notice, Juan Soto is our best offensive player at the moment. He just is.
Stanton's right up there. And we'll be talking
Stan is right
Stanton.
Up there. And Stan's production is sort of the production that we expect Aaron Judge to provide at some point. Now, again, this is very hard. These games are hard to play. This is not easy. This is not game 62 of the regular season where you face someone's 5-starter. No one really cares to know who this guy's name is. He's got 2 pitches. He's throwing 93. He doesn't locate well, and then you can just hit a homer in a 6-2 game. You're up 6-2, and you get to jump up and down and celebrate. This is not that. You're facing their ace, right? And if their ace gets in trouble, they're going to go to the bullpen arm specifically that pitches against you well. That's how this goes every time for Aaron Judge. It is a difficult assignment. It just is. So we're an understanding of that. We get the concept. But in the meantime, I'll tell you what, if you want to figure out how does Aaron Judge get out of this, right? Like how does he slow the game down? I'll tell you what, right now, having your 2-hitter that hits right ahead of you play this way, where no one's scoring with the runners in scoring position, no one's driving anyone in, and he can just be like, oh, I'll worry about it myself. I'll hit a homer, right? Stan, oh, don't worry about it. I'll hit a homer, right? When you have these type of things happening, and hopefully Austin Wells can start to put something together, it's just going to make Aaron Judge's job that much easier to where he realizes, oh, I can just fill a role, because that's what all great players really do at the end of the day in this sport. This isn't the NBA. This isn't Michael Jordan and LeBron James, where you can dribble the basketball for 25 or 22 seconds and then hurl up a 3 or hit a fadeaway. This is not that. You need to fill a role, and the person that fills their role most often is given all the credit and they win all the MVPs. That's how it goes. So yeah, that's my expectation. At some point or another, the players around him are doing just enough to take the pressure off him. My expectation is to see 99 make an appearance. I would expect in this series, if we want to go to the World Series, I think it happens very soon.
I agree. And they've played 5 games. So it's a 5-game slump, whatever. It's normal. It happens. So I do think, obviously, it holds a lot of weight. I'm not trying to minimize that. Yeah, he hasn't really helped as much as maybe he wanted to. But today was his first RBI. People will complain, you have no outs. You have Avila come in and he doesn't give up a run.
Don't forget his defense.
But Judge had the sacrifice fly. And, that run now, instead of it being 5-2, would have been 4-2 if he didn't come through. If he strikes out there, they didn't get that run home. So, right. Yeah, I think that was when I think that's the inning when Verdugo overran second and everyone was making a big deal about it.
What was his? Oh, okay. I think I figured it out. Mm-hmm. I think Verdugo's plan in that moment.
I know exactly what it was. It's smart. It's what they're being coached to do.
Is it if he drops the ball anyway, we now score, and the fastest way technically for you to get to second base is to just run through. So technically everyone's saying, well, why wouldn't you slide? Because if you slide and the ball is dropped, now you're going to end up being out if you don't slide. Like you're eventually going to be tagged out. And that is technically true. But you have to remember, if he had been safe, we score regardless.
All that mattered was getting that run. That's how he looked at it. And I agree.
So I'm trying to defend him for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I want to go back to earlier in the game to set the tone. We talked about Gleyber Torres, that single to start it off, 107.5 off the bat, 110.5 Juan Soto. Gary, they were smacking the shit out of the ball. Yep. Rizzo, 105. That's Rizzo's first at bat coming back from the injury where he broke 2 fingers. And his first at bat, he hits a 105.4 off the bat. Verdugo, what was today? 107.6. I don't remember the last time Verdugo had a hit that hard.
No,
Juan
neither.
Soto, 109.7. And then we go to the 4th inning. Judge, 101.4 on the sac fly. Okay. Like he crushed that. 101.9. Giancarlo Stanton. Jazz Chisholm with a barrel, 96.2. Volpe with the fly out near the warning track, 100.1.
Judge also hit a screamer to right field that was caught essentially on someone's shoestring. So there was a lot of hard contact today, but also
that was the 99.8 one.
There you go. So to take a step back with this, right? Because that's a lot of, that is impressive to see that your team was essentially consistently hitting the ball hard. That is good.
114.3. Well, yeah. Are we really surprised? Stanton just crushes the ball.
No, but to take a step back with it, you are 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. This is a mostly positive show. Like 99% of this is just great news, right?
Yeah.
But again, when you say, and I mostly agree with you, is that it doesn't matter how we win these games. You have to win the game. You have to. That is the goal. It is not, I can't even necessarily say it's the goal. It is the mission. You quite literally have to win the game. And when we say it doesn't matter how you do it, that is technically true. But when you do it in a certain fashion that is not sustainable, it leads you to believe that, okay, we do have question marks. We still need to answer those questions. Can we score? If there's a man on second and third with 2 outs, should the Yankees believe, based on recent history, that they can trust themselves to get those 2 runners in? Can they expect that? At this point, the answer is no. It's very clearly no. That doesn't mean the Yankees shouldn't feel that they can come out of this. That doesn't mean the Yankees shouldn't feel like we're not going to the World Series. No, it means that you have questions to answer. It is that simple. You come out as a baseball team and you say, what is it that we're succeeding in? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And very clearly right now, the Yankees' weakness is not situations with a man on first. Can you hit a homer? No, we're doing that just fine. We're not struggling with 2 outs, nobody on, and hitting a ball into the upper deck. No, that's not an issue. We're not struggling pitching. Our problem right now is in at-bats where the other team is bringing in some of their better arms in the bullpen. Are we cashing in, right? Are we taking pressure off of arms? I thought we did a decent job of taking pressure off of Rodon. It didn't feel like fight or flight today, which was good news. It allowed him to actually get comfortable in the game. I love that. But we could make it even easier. We just could. We actually had a lot of opportunity today to essentially run away with this game. I want to see this Yankees offense cement themselves. And obviously, 99 is going to be a big reason why. And I'm not going to stop there and put a ton of pressure on him. I'm not going to only put pressure on him. Austin Wells, huge name we need to circle. He has been awful in all of September. He has been awful in his 5 games he's played so far in the postseason. This doesn't mean he's an awful baseball player. He can absolutely turn it around. But the one thing that's changed about Austin Wells, when you go up there and you are not swinging at strikes consistently, this was the strength of Austin Wells. This is the reason why we said we like the idea of him hitting in the heart of the lineup, because we trust him on pitches just off the plate with very tough calls for the home plate umpire. He has the ability to say, that's not my pitch. I'm looking for something else. He has not done that. He's not commanded that essentially for the last month and a half. And his numbers have essentially suffered because of it. And now that we went into the postseason, I think most of us were just hoping it would change rather than having material to make a suggestion as to why it would change. So Austin Wells right now, very clearly, there is pressure on him to perform. I know you've mentioned that Trevino, there is an opportunity. Maybe he plays in one of these games. I completely agree with you, especially on the road when we go to Cleveland. We've got back-to-back-to-back games in Cleveland. I expect Trevino to start one of those games. We just don't know when they'll be. But I will tell you, Wells has got to hit. Judge has got to hit. If that happens, I expect those numbers with runners in scoring position to change quickly.
No, I agree with that. I think right now, and I know we went over the numbers. Wells is better in the cleanup role. Stanton's better hitting 5th. But at this point, I don't care. I don't think moving Stanton up to 4th is going to ruin him. So I would be doing that. After that, I would probably not really mess around with the lineup. It's not like Chisholm is playing any better than Wells. Maybe a little bit, but still.
Yeah, not really.
So yeah, I just my thing here is I think Jazz is going to find it. I do. I'm not worried about Jazz. I do think Wells is going to find it, but Wells might not find it until the World Series if they make it. I think there's a real possibility that Jose Trevino, he does end up offering more offensively, because right now Wells is in a rut, and it feels like we're watching him in quicksand, and he's just, shaking and everything. And, obviously that makes you fall quicker. You're supposed to obviously stay calm. And I just feel like every time, the more and more strikeouts that pile up, the more and more bad at bats, well, he's thinking about the next, I got to hit a home run, or I got to do this. And I think we're seeing that with his approach at the plate. We keep talking about the walks. Almost everybody in the lineup drew a walk today, except for Chisholm and Wells. And I think they're doing the same thing. I think Chisholm's trying to hit everything out of the park. He's taking way too many strikes, by the way. And I will say, The umpire today was god awful behind the plate. Awful.
He was not good.
He was horrible. With that said, though, and while I agree with Jazz being upset, we watched Rodon composed. Jazz he has to stay composed in that at bat.
He does.
I did have an issue with that because I felt like he kind of threw the at bat away, and that pitch was hittable. So I was a little disappointed in that. I'm not out on Jazz, just disappointed. But I think, I want to touch on Rizzo, Birdie, and Cabrera, and then wrap it up with the roster and just wrap up the show. Now, this won't take very long. Rizzo's the starting first baseman. We know that. He came back from an injury and immediately is starting today. Looked good today. Probably one of the more confident games I've seen out of him, where he actually looked like he could be a force at the plate. I thought he was aggressive. I texted you that. I liked his approach. The reality is this. Rizzo has to make that play at first base. That can't just be like, he had a hit today. It's okay. It's not okay. That's not acceptable. And if he can't make that play, then he shouldn't be out there. I'm just being honest, because Cabrera's made that play and Birdie definitely has made that play. He's made crazier plays. And you said off air, Birdie's been the best first baseman. He is the best first baseman on the team. Now, that might come as a shock to a lot of people because we never really talked about Birdie at first base. This is very new. He doesn't play first base. They tried this out and it worked. He made a diving play, huge play against the Royals his first time there. So, look, I'm looking at these three, and I'm talking. I love Michael Kay. I gotta push back on what he said today. He tweeted out that something along the lines of, "Well, Rizzo is the better fielder, so I don't know why he's not out there in the ninth. They must just not believe that he is." For whatever reason, he might be winded, whatever, that's why Cabrera's in there, because he's not the better fielder. I disagree. I think Cabrera is the better fielder than Rizzo. But I think Rizzo has that experience and he has that slugging that you're like, okay, if he got going, he could be a problem in the postseason, a la Giancarlo Stanton. But my thing here, and I'm not going to make too much of a deal about it, because if Rizzo has the approach he had today, I'm not going to really complain. My biggest issue was missing that, because to be honest with you, that was inexcusable, and that led them back into the game. I thought he should have gotten an error on that, and he did not.
That I agree about saying that was an error. I completely agree. But let me say this, because I think perhaps, now I could be wrong, that this is what Michael Kay is actually saying.
I'm not throwing shade at him. I just
but it doesn't matter. If you disagree with Michael Kay, that's not shade. That is just called disagreeing. That's what adults do. Now, if you really think about this, there is a physical side of the game and there is a mental side of the game. That is as simple as I can put it. There are certain things that certain players do at certain positions where you say, okay, that guy he's faster. He's got a better glove. He's got a better arm. Okay. I'll give you a perfect example. I believe Jason Dominguez is a much better athlete than Alex Verdugo. I don't even think it's close. Okay. I can say that for sure. But if there was a situation where I thought, okay, man on first base, line drive hit in front of him, you obviously can't leave your feet because we really don't want this runner to score from first base. Do I trust Alex Verdugo to make the correct decision, or do I trust the young Jason Dominguez? Now, even if Jason Dominguez was a better fielder than what he is now and the Yankees trusted him much more, you would trust the veteran presence to make a smarter decision. And essentially it ends up working out more in the Yankees' favor in the short term. And that's what I think that Michael Kay is actually saying. I believe, and I still believe this, that Rizzo, in a given situation where you're like, okay, we just need an out in this situation, you don't need to try to do too much, try to roll a double play when the play is just to flip the ball to first base and be done with it and then live to fight another day. I think Rizzo, in a tight situation, he's going to make the smarter plays. He has more history at first base. He's more sound at first base. He's going to make more errors. He's not the same player he was when he was 30. He's not the same player he was in Chicago. This is not a secret. We get this. but he's at first base because he's been at first base. He knows what to do over there. He will make more errors than he did in the past, but in a situation where he's got to make a decision, I believe the Yankees and Aaron Boone as well, and maybe Michael Kay in some degree, trust Rizzo with his decision-making at first base much more than they do Birdie or Cabrera, who have shown that they're more fleet of foot or just better fielders altogether in itself. So I agree with you in general. I probably lean more on the foot of putting the best fielders at every position, but sometimes at key positions defensively, you need to make the play of putting the smarter player there. And I think Rizzo right now is that guy, and perhaps it's the right move. So as of today, yeah, the wonky play didn't look very good, but Rizzo did look pretty decent at the plate today. He was okay at first base. I didn't really have a ton of complaints, but I get where they're coming from.
Yeah, that was just my only issue. Because I mean, that could have been the game. That could have opened up the door. Now it's a 5-2 ball game, and
right.
It felt like it gave unnecessary. So like Hill gets tagged with that, but that should have been an out, maybe even a double play. And then Hill gets an error because it's interference. And I want to talk about this because I have some pushback on it. It is interference. It is. But at the same time, I do feel like it was called a little bit ridiculously on Juan Soto multiple times this year when he was the runner. When he can't go back to the base because he has to let the fielder make the play. That happened multiple times, and he wasn't protected like that. So I had an issue with that. And another thing, they were giving him credit, and I thought the broadcast was great today. I thought Brian Anderson was spectacular. I thought that's exactly what we needed. It felt like a postseason game again. No disrespect to Bob Costas. I just feel like postseason baseball, you're going to bring in the casual audience. This is how you grow the sport. Having a guy who has an emphatic home run call over a guy that has more of a not lackadaisical, but more like, slower and just kind of, narrating instead of actually, living in the moment. Yeah. I just thought Brian Anderson was great, but they brought up, and I think it was Jeff Francoeur who said Rocchio makes a great play because he runs into him on purpose and then runs back into him. See, this is where I push back on this, okay? Yes, it's interference, but does that mean Rocchio can go over and punch him right in the face? I thought that was bullshit. I'm just being honest with you. I thought that has no place in baseball. Like, he ran into him and decked him. I understand what he's trying to do, but I thought it was Bush League. And I just don't think that has any place in the game. If you do that at home, you're thrown out with the new rules, right? You can't truck the catcher. So why can you truck the first baseman or whoever's covering first? I disagreed with it, man.
Yeah,
I didn't like it.
Fair. My perspective on this play is that I'm trying to be as objective as I can. I get I'm a Yankees podcaster. When I watch Rocchio, whatever his name is, and Juan Soto trying to draw an interference call, because when I watch Juan Soto run from first to second base, my initial thought was, oh, they're like trying to make something happen here and make it more cerebral than it needs to be. That's what I was watching. I felt like in the moment when I saw it, it seemed like it didn't feel organic. Like those Red Sox, remember the interference call where they're having like Dustin Pedroia standing and arguing at home plate going, how can you call an interference there? It was more the guys sliding into third base and falling down on the ground. There was a whole to do. It felt like interference. These moments between those two players, it felt like players that were just trying to be smart. And I knew immediately what was happening while it was happening was, oh, this player is going to try to draw interference. And then I was watching him just do a bunch of nonsense. When I sign up for baseball and I'm going to watch the game, I'm not trying to watch players circumvent the rules, trying to be smart in areas of the game that don't need to be smart in, right? And I felt like that's what I was watching. I felt like I was watching a player outsmart the moment, even though the moment was quite obvious. I just don't like it. I just think specifically for me, if you see a player very similar to the NBA that's trying to draw a foul or if the if a hitter is doing this and trying to hit the catcher's glove, I think at some point or another, the human element of the game should almost save it to where you say, yeah, that guy's trying to manipulate the rules of the game. We're just not going to let it happen. Right. And yeah, obviously I get why they're not just going to eject a player if he's going to run into a guy. I get it, because we're at this stage of the season. There's almost nothing you can do about it. You just hope you're not in that situation. But overall, to conclude this, it was just a moment in the game. We were talking about the rules where I don't want to talk about the rules. I want to talk about players striking out, not scoring guys with a man on third base or second base with less than 2 outs, failing to get a guy over. I want to talk about those moments of the game and not obstruction calls. I don't want to hear about them. Obviously, the less we see of them, the better.
I agree. I think you and I we have similar views on this. I just thought it was Bush League. Like he already, and that's, I guess, the thing that annoys me is that he already calls obstruction, right? Mm-hmm. So why did he go back and then like, boom, like he tried to like truck him? I'm like, what am I watching? This is baseball. You get a
free lick. I mean, yeah, it's like in the NFL when you hit a guy, you hit the quarterback, and then they give you the extra push down and hold you to the ground. They're not trying to hurt you, but at the same time, it's like they get a little knockdown for you, right? So it's hard to say this guy's trying to hurt a player, because I don't believe he was trying to hurt Juan Soto. I do not believe that. But you do get a free lick on a player, essentially. And it's unfortunate
it was
that
Tim
we're in
Hill, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay, well, Tim Hill, excuse me. Tim Hill, you just get a free lick. We don't want it to happen.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to confuse. I meant Juan Soto earlier in the year when he got. I understood that. I got confused because I was talking about Juan Soto. But yes, to your point, you don't want a situation where Tim Hill can get knocked down. Once it's obstruction and it's understood, okay, we've got an obstruction call here, just stop. The play is over. The result of the play has already been called. Once obstruction's been called, the play doesn't just continue and we just throw the ball over the yard. And how did they give him second base on that? Like how? He wasn't getting the second base. He was out. He was out. Truthfully.
Oh no, trust me. I saw the play. Yes, he was going to be out, but he was hell-bent on obstruction. He wanted it.
Yeah, if you want to say obstruction, totally fine. Then he gets first. I understood exactly why Aaron Boone came out and was like, are you kidding me? He's like, you can't just give him second base. He's like,
you know why they have to? Do you want me to tell you why they gave him second base?
Because he took the turn and he was
Nope. They have to give him second base no matter what, even if he never would have made it to second base. Reason being is because defenses would decide. And I remember being in college baseball and we were taught this, especially infielders, because as an outfielder, I would stand in to a lot of these assignments and they would talk and say, hey, if they're not going to call these obstruction calls aggressively for the offense, just obstruct every time. And guess what? And they're going back to first base. They have no opportunity to go to second base. Obstruct and see if we can backpick a guy. Keep obstructing. You do it 2 or 3 times. Maybe we'll get an out that late in the game, it changes the game. So essentially, you would just have people, again, to go back to the NFL, if they're not calling defensive pass interference, what is the defense taught? You are going to hold more. That's what you're taught. If they're not going to call something, use it to your advantage. And that's something that the obstruction call obviously tries to prevent, is defenses from essentially just running into base runners and saying, oh yeah, he just never would have made it to third. It's like, well, you were just standing in the middle of the baseline. So I get why he was given second base. It obviously just sucks because someone was trying to draw an obstruction call and it worked. It sucks watching us be outsmarted in a way when you'd rather just kind of it not happen. But
it's such a weird play.
At least we won the game and we get to laugh at this moment.
We do, yes. Although I will say, I have a new least favorite player in the league. It's Rocchio. I can't stand that guy.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, it's not Santander anymore.
I don't have a least favorite player anymore. I think
no, that's wrong.
Player, who?
It's Naylor. I can't stand Naylor.
I like Naylor a lot because he went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts today. He's like one of my favorite players to watch. I love him. So much fun to watch. It's a good time.
I love you for pointing that out. Hey. That's great.
I don't dislike players anymore. Like, you remember we had the enemies of Altuve, and you see a
No,
JD Martinez,
it's
great
just
players.
I just find
Come
ones
on,
that annoy
you'll win.
me. Like, I mean, I don't look for them, but like
Yes.
Rocchio, the name, the home run, the obstruction, I was just like, I want this guy to go away. Like, he's annoying. And then Naylor, the whole looking like a total jackass 2 years ago when he did that. And then Glaber, the final out, doing that. I love that. But yeah, that has to be the dumbest celebration after a home run I've ever seen in my life. And we watched Jose Siri, who is a Twitter user, basically, jog the bases at like slow. He was jogging in slow motion, like as if your camera shot it and you were playing it back in slow-mo.
Scott Van Pelt talked about him. Jose Siri has never been talked about on Scott Van Pelt's show ever a day in his life. I guarantee it. And I promise you, I don't really know the answer to this, but I just feel like I do. Okay. There's no way that Scott Van Pelt has ever talked about Jose Siri, and he did in that moment because obviously of the showboating. So some players, they want to be the center of attention. Obviously, their play over the course of the regular season and the postseason doesn't warrant them to be. But as is tradition with baseball, because this is a very hard sport to play, even some of the smallest players on everyone's roster, because these are very good teams, they will make an impact at some point or another, you would expect. And some people want to be the moment. They want to be the topic of conversation. And one of the ways to do that is to make yourself look like a total jackass and celebrate in a moment that doesn't call for it. And so there you have it, doing the baby rocker and taking 30 seconds to run around the bases when you're down 5-0. It happens. It happens quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that likes Naylor, but you know, and
Yeah,
I
don't think about Naylor.
But I'll tell you right now, Bo Naylor, everyone likes him. That's a Yankee fan. That dude could not block anything today.
It was a weird game.
It was bizarre. I was like,
my mom literally was like, "How'd you guys score?" I was like, the same way we did before. We walked and then there was a pass ball. That's exactly what I text her, because that's the only way to describe our offense today. It was like, I mean, we hit some home runs, which was great, but that was kind of after the fact. Before, we took control of the game by just taking our walks. Very simple.
And those were 2 solo home runs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's like, obviously love home runs, and postseason solo home runs are still dangerous and everything. Yes. They matter, but yeah, it's weird. I still think they got to be cautious with Lane Thomas, because I watched that. I mean, and Jose Ramirez, but I watched Lane Thomas in that last series. He can really break open a game, and he's great with runners in scoring position. Yeah, I'm still a little concerned by him, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on. I mean, they got a good team. It's why they made it this far. They don't have a great team, though. No one does. And we've talked about that. So maybe the Yankees do, team. But, that remains to be seen. So we're going to find out. Just to wrap up here, the roster, Duke Ellis was cut from the roster. He's still on the Yankees, but he was cut from the postseason roster. So was Ben Rice. Totally understand Ben Rice. Duke Ellis was a little bit surprised, but something I did anticipate, I guess, the possibility of, because if you're moving Rizzo back into the lineup, well, now you can use Birdie and Cabrera as pinch runners. So, you do have that. And of course, Jason Dominguez, but God, if he were to ever get hurt running the bases, I'd be so pissed. So yeah, then Cortez was left off, which tells me, and I don't want to guarantee anything, but I feel like the Yankees feel like they know they're going to the World Series, and they want to give Cortez that extra weight where he's going to actually pitch. I wouldn't be surprised if they go with a 5-man rotation if they make the World Series. I really wouldn't. They have 5 guys that could absolutely start. So I don't know if they will, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Stroman made the roster, as we talked about, in Rizzo. So that's that. Any last thoughts on that before we wrap it up with the field level shout outs and then me figuring out a movie in the last 2 seconds?
Yeah, no, for me, short and sweet. When it came to that last roster spot in Nestor Cortez, I actually believe that Nestor would have been ready later in this series if they really needed him. But I think the Yankees just realized there's no real reason to put a guy on the roster to pitch one big game at the end of the series when Garrett Cole's already slated for game 6. Nestor Cortez probably wouldn't have been slated for game 7. So you're really just telling me he would have pitched probably a game 5 on the road. He doesn't pitch well on the road to begin with. So the Yankees probably looked at it and said, we're just setting up Nestor Cortez to pitch a game on the road and then be done for the rest of the series. And then that's just risking his health. Why don't we use Luis Gil to our advantage? He didn't pitch in the division series. We'll essentially swap them out. Luis Gil will now pitch in this series, and he's a big-time arm. He can absolutely fill those shoes. And if we get to a World Series, Nestor Cortez is fully healthy. Luis Gil, in theory, is fully healthy. Schmidt is fully healthy. He's not going on 2 or 3 days rest. He should be ready for a World Series. And obviously, you got Garrett Cole and Rodon. The Yankees have options. You roll with the hottest options. And if you do this, you get to the World Series, you pitch who you want. The other teams are being reactionary. They're pitching who they can.
No, I absolutely agree. And the Yankees having that luxury, I think, is a big reason why they should be considered the favorite right now.
I agree.
Dodgers don't have that. Mets, they're probably the closest to having that. I mean, we just talked about it. The Guardians might be down to 2 pitchers. So it's not going to be easy. I don't want to make it out to be that it's going to be easy. It's baseball. Things happen. Big moments happen. You get up and you're like, oh, I'm so ready. I'm pumped up. And then you go 0 for 4 in big spots. It happens, right? Same things where maybe, something happens where then another guy comes into the game that you're not expecting, and Aaron Boone, and he hits a huge, home run. That's just the reality of baseball. Okay. So I'm never going to say it's going to be easy and all that, but I'm feeling good, feeling very good about this. So also feeling really good about you guys, the field level shout outs. We appreciate you guys. Juan Cepeda, kid from LI, Carlos Marrero, Jeff J, Ed W, Brian Fuchs, Ryan Hoffman, Rich Squires, Joshua Halleckman, Egyptian Magician, Nick Gomes, Jalen Sestero, JT Roberts, Mickey G, Ronnie, Tony Jones, Insight, and Aaron Judge is my Pookie. I can't believe I have to say that every time.
These YouTube names, man, they get not even a comment on it. It's on it. Isn't it crazy?
It's a supporter. So we appreciate that. And all right, for the movie, I'm going to go with Cabin in the Woods, unless you've already said that.
Oh, God, no. I don't watch scary movies, so no. The only scary movie I've seen is Sinister. Dude. I don't watch scary movies, no.
No, Cabin in the Woods, it's kind of cool. In a way, it almost canonizes. I don't know if that's even a word. I guess it is. So it canonizes all horror movies in the same universe. It's bizarre. It's really cool. It's so cool. I think what's his face? Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth is in it for 30 seconds. He had to shoot Thor. He couldn't be in the full movie. So that's funny.
Wow.
But yeah, check it out. I thought it was freaking awesome. It's not what you're expecting, because I thought Cabin in the Woods was going to be I don't know, one of those Evil Dead type of movies. You're in the woods or whatever. And no, it's way different than you would expect. So definitely check it out. Gary, that means you and everyone else. So if you got to this point, and we're talking about almost an hour and 30. So you watched I would say you watched Venom 3, right? Or Venom 2, because Venom 2 was an hour and 30.
I was trying to watch Venom this past weekend, and then it turns out they told me it was on, they're like, oh, it's on Amazon Prime. I go to Amazon Prime. I still have to buy it. So I was like, oh, I bought Amazon Prime so that I could have the access to buy the movie. Stupid.
Oh, no.
Yeah, completely dumb. Yeah, but we won't go on too much longer. Yeah, like you said, but I'm not going to watch that movie. Terrified of scary movies, but put it in the comments.
Yeah. So it's Cabin in the Woods. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys. You guys take care, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Later, folks.
Like this video.